Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for joining us today. Dr. Jitendra Singh is the Honorable Minister of State with independent charge for development of the Northeastern region and the Minister of State for the Prime Minister's Office. Personnel, public grievances and pensions, Department of Atomic Energy, Department of Space, all these departments and Government of India are being taken care of by the Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for being a part of this initiative of ours, which is being in work for quite a few months. Before you came, Honorable Sir, we actually had a briefing to the audience about the theme address which was given by Mr. Ajay Podar, who is the chairman of our Committee on East Asia, Oceania and the ASEAN region. He gave out the details of how the event was planned and the kind of overwhelming response which we received from not only the embassies and the high commissions of the ASEAN countries in India, but also the ASEAN-India Business Council, who were the first ones to say, please go ahead, you have our total support, and I thank Dato Ramesh for this. And we also got extensive support from all our embassies, Indian embassies and high commissions across in the ASEAN countries. So with that brief, Honorable Minister, we would like to start the proceedings, and I'd like to request our President, Dr. D.K. Agarwal, to kindly welcome you with a plant and a memento, please. Thank you very much, President Sir, for doing the honors. May I now kindly request you to kindly and formally welcome our chief guest, Dr. Jitendra Singh Ji.
Good morning. Dr. Jitendra Singh Ji, Honorable Minister of State with independent charge for development of Northeastern region and Minister of State for Prime Minister's Office, Personal, Public Grievances and Pensions, Department of Atomic Energy and Department of Space, Government of India. His Excellency Mr. Chutin Ton Gongkaski, Ambassador of Royal Thai Embassy and Chair of ASEAN region. Mr. Dato Ramesh Kodamal, Co-Chairman, ASEAN-India Business Council. Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, Senior Vice President, PhD Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Ajay Podar, Chairman, ASEAN Committee. Mr. Vivek Sehgal, Principal Director, PhD Chamber of Commerce. His Excellencies who are present here from Cambodia, Brunei, Philippines, Singapore, and other senior diplomats. Former Presidents, PhD Chamber of Commerce, members of the Managing Committee, media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am really delighted and honored to welcome each one of you. In fact, in the initial speech, Mr. Vivek Sehgal said, it is a happy day for us. It is indeed a very happy day for us that we are hosting for the first time India-ASEAN Business Summit. and I'm happy to say that we have more than 60 delegates from 10 ASEAN countries and more than 250 delegates from India. The kind of response we are seeing, it is amazing. And the very fact that today we have the gracious presence of our Honorable Minister Dr. Jitendra Prasad ji, who has actually done a huge work in terms of development of infrastructure in northern eastern states. Northern eastern states is the gateway to our ASEAN countries, and the development of northern eastern states will pave a big, I will say, way for the development of our trade between India and ASEAN. So thank you very much, sir, for your gracious presence and for encouraging us by your presence today. I would like to welcome the more than 60 delegates, some of whom have joined today, some of whom are joining in the later part of the day. Our chairman of ASEAN Committee, Mr. Ajay Poddar, I can tell you he has done a splendid job. He went to ASEAN countries, almost 5 ASEAN countries he visited for the curtain raiser. He has been working for last 5-6 months, and the kind of efforts has gone into in making this today's conference a success. I think he, along with Vivek Sehgal, who is the principal director, they have played a big role in making it success. I would want everybody to give a big round of applause. Well, it would not be complete without talking about PSG Chamber of Commerce. PSG Chamber of Commerce, it came to existence in 1905. PSG Chamber has been working for the promotion of Indian industry, trade and entrepreneurship for last 114 years as a catalyst. PSG Chamber is a very proactive, progressive and very dynamic pan-India apex organization. It is providing a very effective platform for the interface between industry and the government to implement, to plan various policies for the economic growth of the country. PSG Chamber has a special focus on MSME sector, and it is working at the grassroots level with national and international linkages to propel progress, harmony and integrated development of the country. A big round of applause for the PSG Chamber of Commerce. Well, coming back to today's topic, ASEAN. In 1967, 5 countries came together. 5 countries with different languages, different religion, different culture, they came together and they formed a trading bloc, ASEAN. Today, there are 10 countries in this bloc. It has completed 52 years and it has emerged as a very important growth center of the world. It has emerged a very powerful manufacturing hub, manufacturing and trading hub, and also one of the largest global consumer market. What this ASEAN is? If I take ASEAN 10 countries together, treating it as a one country, the GDP of ASEAN is $2.8 trillion. If I rank it, it is the 3rd largest economy of Asia and 5th largest economy of the world. I think it's a huge power. ASEAN economy is growing at a rapid pace. Even it is expected to grow at that pace because they have a lot of planned infrastructure expenditure It has a very large consumption. It has a very large population of around 65 crore. It has promised number of economic reforms. We have seen what happens when you do reforms in India, like after 1992, where India has moved. Similarly, the ASEAN economy has promised number of economic reforms to happen. So our sense is for next 5 years, it will grow at a rate of 5% and above. As I said, ASEAN is a great consumer market, a very big consumer market. 60% of its population is below 35 years of age. In fact, to be exact, around 38 crore. It has third largest workforce. It has a strong middle class of more than 15 crore people. Well, now I talk about India. We have been hearing Indian growth has slowed down. We saw growth of 5% in last quarter, 5.9% in the earlier quarter. There is a talk that IIP numbers are the worst in last 6 years. There is a talk that, the sentiment has really become bad. But I can tell you, India has the strongest macro fundamentals. In a growing economy, it has grown at the rate of 7.35 on an average in last 5 years. In an economy which is growing, if you can contain your inflation below 4%, it is a huge achievement. If you can contain your fiscal deficit to 3.3%, it is a huge achievement. The economy, the government vision is to make it a $5 trillion economy by 2024 and a $10 trillion economy by 2030. We would be the third largest economy of the world by 2030. And I am very confident the measures which have been taken in last 2-3 months, the corporate tax reduced to 22%, the corporate tax for new manufacturing companies reduced to 15%. We have been asking for a number of years that bring down the corporate tax. But frankly, we never believed that tax can come down to that low. This is really amazing and a huge direct tax reform by this government. I think we need to applaud this government for doing such a wonderful thing. I am very confident with these measures, our economy will bounce back in the year to start from 2020. So India is on a very strong wicket. ASEAN is on a very strong wicket. What about if these two economies, they come together? The population would be almost 200 crore. Every third person would be from ASEAN and India in the world. Such a large population it is covering. The GDP, combined GDP is almost close to $5 trillion. In this background, when the world is facing slowdown, earlier the growth projection of the world economy was 3.2%. Now it has come down to 2.9%. When the world economy is facing trade wars and there is a feeling of slowing down of the world economy, the relations between ASEAN and India holds great importance for both the trading bloc. In fact, if I talk about ASEAN and India, we currently have our business worth $142 billion. And let me also tell you, in 2010, we entered into a free trade agreement into merchandise. In 2014, and the agreement became effective from 2015, we entered into a free trade agreement into services. From 2010 to 2018, our trade has increased, merchandise trade has increased from $45 billion to $96 billion, almost double. Such is the potential. And this engagement with ASEAN is the fundamental, is the crucial element of our foreign policy, is the crucial element of our Act East policy. with Modi government taking over, there was an emphasis on Act East, and Northeast is providing the gateway. And we have to deepen this relationship. As Mr. Ajay Poddar pointed out, we share huge cultural, historical, traditional relationship. There is a relationship between people to people. And we like each other, we respect each other. We treat them as friends. As he said that when I go to these ASEAN countries, I find that I am at home. So when we share the shared boundaries, the connectivity, the culture is embedded in our relationship. And I'm sure today's conference is one step in that direction also. Whether RCEP or no RCEP, this relationship is going to increase day by day, year by year. When we say today, tomorrow, together. Today we are together, tomorrow we are together, we will remain together. This relationship will continue to flourish. When he says $110 billion, Mr. Poddar said, we'll take it to $500 billion. I can tell you that is a real possibility. With this, I will not take much time. I thank you, each one of you, for coming here. I thank Honorable Minister Jitendra Prasad ji for coming here and gracing the occasion and giving us encouragement. With this, I close here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your inspiring address. And I think with the Honorable Minister here, there's a reaffirmation of our Northeast connect with the ASEAN region. Thank you very much, sir. May I now request upon our Senior Vice President, Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, to kindly give us a keynote address.
Good morning. Dr. Jitendra Singh, Minister of State, Independent Charge for the Development of Northeastern Region, and Minister of State for Prime Minister's Office, Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, Department of Atomic Energy, and Department of Space, Government of India. It's quite a mouthful, but that is the number of responsibilities that our Honorable Minister is actually shouldering alone. Mr. Dato Ramesh Goramal, Co-Chairman, ASEAN Business Council, AIBC. His Excellency, Mr. Shuddin Khan Gongsatki, Ambassador, Royal Thai Embassy and Chair of the ASEAN region. Your Excellencies, the Ambassadors of Brunei, Cambodia, Philippines and Singapore. Ambassador K.V. Rajan, our own part of the PhD chamber and the head of the Ambassadors Forum. Mr. Ajay Poddar, the Chairman of ASEAN Committee PhD CCI, and Mr. Vivek Sehgal, Principal Director PhD CCI, Excellencies, former Presidents, diplomats, members of the Managing Committee, media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you all again, and it's really a privilege for me to be sharing this dais with such luminaries today and to be a part of this conference. I would once again like to thank the Honorable Minister, Dr. Jitendra Singh, for gracing today's Indo-ASEAN Business Summit and all the delegates from various from the various countries for their gracious presence at this summit. Friends, ASEAN is one of the most economically dynamic regions of the world today. Strengthening of ASEAN, expanding connectivity and deepening Indo-ASEAN economic integration are among the key priorities of India's Act East policy. In fact, Act East policy is going to be one of the cornerstones of both our foreign policy and our trade policy. And the Honorable Minister's presence here is again an affirmation of this, the importance that the Government of India attaches to interacting and integrating more and more strongly with the ASEAN and with the East. The Government of India is making continuous significant efforts to strengthen the partnership with ASEAN in various areas of mutual interest. The ASEAN-India Free Trade Agreement, AIFTA, provides increased scope for integration of supply chains in the various emerging and developing sectors. ASEAN, of course, is a major global hub of manufacturing, trade, both, as well as one of the fastest growing consumer markets in the world. The region is well acknowledged for its diverse culture, language, and region. But still, despite the diversity, one must admit that ASEAN does have a basic continuity and strand of culture and of history. And I think India also has a good part of that history and culture which is shared with the ASEAN countries, historically and also economically. Although ASEAN is becoming more and more integrated, it offers investors several opportunities in terms of local preferences, cultural diversities, and varying markets, of course. India's relations with ASEAN have witnessed a shift during the pre- and post-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement period. During the post-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, India's total merchandise trade with ASEAN economies has increased from $53 million in 2010 to $93 billion in 2018. And of course, the services trade has also alongside grown to $49 million. The CAGR of the merchandise trade growth alone between ASEAN and India has been 7%. And the export from India to ASEAN economies increased from $23 billion in 2010 to $36 billion in 2018, again showing a CAGR of 5%. So practically both the economies have been greatly integrated into each other, and as mentioned that due to this so much of cultural affinity alongside the economic affinity and the traditional and historical links that we already had, I think we are natural partners for each other, and the Indo-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement actually does really reinforce the fact of our engagement being to the advantage of everybody. It is observed, however, that the concentration of India's exports to ASEAN economies is quite high in just 20 commodities, which share around 85% of the merchandise. Going ahead, the commodity composition of India, we feel, should be focused on for diversification with the inclusion of more and more commodities in the export basket from India to ASEAN. India has always supported the liberalized regime of international trade scenario. However, our country has not signed the RCEP at this juncture, present juncture, due to certain differences over tariffs, the trade deficit that India has with other countries, and certain non-tariff barriers. I think these are not intractable issues. These are only issues of working together and spending some more time trying to understand each other's concerns and trying to be able to arrive at a common platform. So if a particular cutoff date has not been achieved, it still does not mean that it is a very terrible setback. It is just a part of the process, and the Chamber is very hopeful that both all the partners in the RCEP shall be able to arrive at a suitable and satisfactory arrangement, we really hope. Because the concern that India had on services probably is something that is definitely now going to be on the agenda, and we are hopeful that we should be able to work together. In any case, what is to be appreciated is that other than India, there are 15 countries who have, of course, now gone ahead and signed the RCEP. And out of those 15 countries, 10 are ASEAN countries with whom India already has an FTA. Two more economies, Japan and South Korea, again are FTA partners with India. So it is just 3 more countries, China, Australia and New Zealand, with which India does not have any free trade arrangement. And I think as we work on it together, I am very, very hopeful that that this RCEP should be an arrangement which we should all be able to work together on, and we should be able to sign and to work and proceed. Further, in order to enhance the economic cooperation between the two regions of India and ASEAN, the companies from India and ASEAN should, in the Chamber's view, keep promoting for more and more joint ventures and set up entities to start manufacturing in a joint venture format. The ASEAN companies may be given certain aid and incentives to enhance their contribution to India's MSME sector, for which the Chamber is very, very, very happy to interact with the Government of India and to present the viewpoints from our partners in ASEAN. Through mutual cooperation and greater market access for sectors like agriculture and food processing, ITES, e-commerce and fintech, infrastructure, healthcare, pharmaceutical, automotive, education, skill development, tourism, and so many other sectors would strengthen the Indo-ASEAN trade and investment relations in the coming times. Some of the recommendations for enhancing Indo-ASEAN services trade potential include exploring synergies between the manufacturing and services trade, facilitation of mobility of professionals and business visits between India and ASEAN, encouraging greater regulatory cooperation and exchange of best international practices among others. The growth in ASEAN and India is expected to further strengthen on account of promising economic reforms, strong trade rebound, and resilient domestic consumption scenario. The Indo-ASEAN dynamic trade relations would be enhanced by encouraging the trade in services and investment agreements, continuous review of Indo-ASEAN trade in goods agreements, harmonizing and simplifying the customs procedures, undertaking capacity building programs, workshops and seminars, promoting greater private sector engagement, supporting improved access to financial services, especially for MSMEs, among others. I believe today's Indo-ASEAN Business Summit would play a crucial role in strengthening the Indo-ASEAN partnership and promote growth and development in these two regions. It is encouraging that significant efforts have been made by the Government of India to recognize the economic opportunities presented by the rising Indo-ASEAN engagement. Going forward, it becomes crucial to understand the strengths of India's business in the ASEAN market and to tailor the strategies accordingly. Thank you so much. And let's hope that today's first Indo-ASEAN Business Summit really gives us some very, very positive outcomes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for that in-depth address, and I'm sure it's going to enlighten a lot of us here as to how to go ahead and work with each other, the Indians and the ASEAN citizens. Thank you very much, sir. May I now request His Excellency from the Royal Embassy of Thailand, His Excellency Gong Sakdi, who's also the chair of Thailand, the chair of the ASEAN region, Thailand being the chair this year. And I'd like to acknowledge once again, His Excellency, your unrelenting support throughout the last 6-7 months of this. Please.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Just gone good afternoon. But you know, when PhD Chamber asked me to come and speak as chair of ASEAN, I felt like sending them the picture of the Prime Minister of Thailand handing over the gavel to the Prime Minister of Vietnam. But actually, our chairmanship ends the 31st of December. So I cannot shirk my responsibilities. Shri Jitendra Singh, Minister of State for Development of Northeastern Region and Minister of State for Prime Minister's Office. Dato Ramesh Kodamamal, Co-Chairman of ASEAN-India Business Council. Shri D.K. Agrawal, President of PhD Chamber. Shri Sanjay Agrawal, Senior Vice President of PhD Chamber. Fellow Ambassadors, High Commissioners of ASEAN Member States, ladies and gentlemen. One thing that doesn't need to be said is to reaffirm the economic potential of ASEAN and India. You know, we can live in a lot worse places in the world at this time. And ASEAN and India are among the best. And even when people talk about economic slowing down, I always remind them, look at the projected growth rate of India, look at the projected growth rates of countries in ASEAN. You can do a lot worse. So even when things are not as rosy as we would like, these are two regions where things are going better than others. One of the, and one thing I told the Thai business people and people that call on me is that as ambassador to India, I know the opportunities are there for us to do business. The only thing that I see is that since we come from different countries and regions and so on, our ways are different. You know, our body language, our way of doing business is different. So all you have to do is to identify the opportunities and close the gaps, you know, in the way we do business, our gestures and so on and so forth, because it's